There is a silent war, being waged within you, a war not of fists but of thoughts, a war not between nations, but between the fragments of your own identity. And every day you live unaware of it, you lose. You lose a piece of yourself to a system that thrives on your forgetfulness, to a world that rewards your obedience, not your awakening. They taught you to think in loops. They trained you, like Pavlov's dogs, to salivate at the ding of a notification, to chase validation like crumbs scattered through a labyrinth. And every reward they gave you was a leash. Every like, every comment, every fleeting applause, a chain around your inner world. You weren't born this way. You were born with a wild mind, a primal soul, a storm of potential that terrified the architects of conformity. So they numbed you slowly, cleverly, with comfort, with entertainment, with fear. And you call this peace? You call this growing up? Carl Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But how can you become when you're too busy being programmed? How can you awaken when you're drowning in distraction? Rewiring the mind isn't about becoming more efficient for their machines. It's not about being a better cog, a shinier performer, a happier slave. It's about remembering the architecture of your own psyche, the deep ancient structure of your being that existed long before your job title, your followers, your diploma, or your trauma. It begins when you stop lying to yourself. You say you're fine, but your soul winces in silence. You say you are happy, but your eyes betray the hunger behind them. You say you've moved on, but your dreams still whisper names you pretend to forget. Self-deception is the first virus of the modern mind. To rewire your mind without losing your soul, you must be willing to face the abyss. Not the one outside you, the one within. The one Jung called the shadow, the repressed, denied, buried fragments of yourself that hold the keys to your wholeness. They told you to be positive. They told you to stay high vibe. They told you to avoid low frequency thoughts. But they never told you the truth, that the gold is hidden in the dark, that the monster you're running from is your own unlived potential. You can't become whole by amputating the parts of yourself that scare you. You can't build a new mind on a foundation of denial. You must drag your fear into the light. You must stare at your envy, your rage, your desire, your grief without flinching. Because only when you own your darkness can you command your light. And this isn't some spiritual slogan. This is psychological alchemy, the transformation of psychic lead into spiritual gold, the true meaning of transmutation. You see, your mind has been hijacked by narratives you never questioned, beliefs you inherited from wounded parents, broken systems, scared teachers. Every truth you cling to is a story someone else gave you, and you wear it like skin, forgetting it was never yours. But stories are not facts, and you are not your past. The moment you realize this, truly realize it, in your bones is the moment you become dangerous. Not to others, but to the system that thrives on your sedation. You become a threat because you start to think in questions, not conclusions. You begin to examine the architecture of your thoughts, like an ancient temple testing every pillar, every brick, every whisper in your mind. Is this belief mine? Is this fear real? Is this desire authentic or implanted? You begin to see that most of your thoughts are echoes, not voices. That your anxiety isn't yours. It's a signal from a culture that profits off your uncertainty. That your guilt was manufactured by institutions that needed you obedient, ashamed, and afraid to question. And as the illusions fall away, you begin to feel strange, not enlightened, not ecstatic, but raw, untethered, honest. This is the detox of the soul, the sacred disorientation that precedes rebirth, the shedding of skin that was never truly yours. You won't find this process in a textbook. You won't get a certificate for it. No one will clap when you begin to unravel. But deep in the silence, you will meet something that has waited for you since the beginning. Your real self, not the persona, not the performance, not the mask you wear to survive in a world addicted to surface, but the wild, sacred, terrifying you, the one you buried under years of shoulds, musts, and I'm fine. This is the soul's uprising, the return of the exiled king, the resurrection of the inner queen. And it's not pretty, it's not marketable, it's not Instagrammable. It's a bloody, beautiful, silent revolution. Because rewiring your mind without losing your soul is not about self-improvement, it's about self-remembrance. It's about excavating the forgotten cathedrals within you, the ruined temples of your passion, your purpose, your madness, your joy. You don't need more information. You need confrontation with your own essence, with the parts of you that the world told you to forget. You see, you were never supposed to fit in. You were born to awaken the dreamers, to speak the words that rupture silence, to carry the fire that terrifies the comfortable. So stop asking for permission to become. Burn the script, break the mold, uninstall the program. And remember, you are not a machine to be optimized. You are cosmos to be remembered. Keep walking. The shadows are not your enemy. They are your inheritance. You were not born for safety. You were born to remember, to recall what it means to feel fully, think freely, and walk through the world unchained by the invisible hands of those who profit from your sleep. Because when you live according to a borrowed script, you don't live, you imitate. You mimic success, mirror happiness, replicate ambition, but beneath the costume, you rot quietly, elegantly, and you smile through it. This is what they call a well-adjusted citizen, a person who has learned how to bury their soul deep enough to function. But you didn't come here to function. You came here to erupt, to turn your pain into poetry, to turn your fear into insight, to turn your confusion into clarity so raw. It strips away the falsehoods clinging to you like parasites. And the first step in this eruption is disobedience. Not loud rebellion, but sacred refusal. The quiet, grounded, immovable no to the voices in your head that say, you're not enough, stay small, play nice. Voices that are not yours but sound like you because you've heard them for so long. You must learn to recognize the invaders, the subtle infiltrators in your inner world, the marketing slogans disguised as goals, the generational trauma disguised as morals, the wounded parent's voice disguised as your conscience. Do not negotiate with these ghosts. Name them, face them, exorcise them, because until you do, they will rule you, and you will call it destiny. You see, the mind doesn't just believe what it sees what it believes. And if your beliefs were forged in fear, then your entire world becomes a prison painted to look like home. So we rewire, not with mantras or forced positivity, but with truth, with ruthless self-honesty so sharp, it bleeds the lies out of your thinking. It will hurt. It's supposed to. The pain is not punishment, it's purification. The cracking of the shell so the self can emerge. But beware, in this unraveling, you will be tempted to numb again, to return to the noise, to binge, scroll, escape, explain. Resist that temptation. Stay in the silence, in the discomfort. That is where your soul sharpens. Because clarity isn't given, it's carved. And the blade is made of your willingness to sit with everything you've been running from. Most people don't change because they want clarity without chaos, growth without grief, freedom without the fire. But the mind must burn before it is reborn. All true transformation begins with demolition, the breaking of internal walls built by cowardice, conformity, and centuries of inherited fear. Those walls kept you safe once, but now they are your cage. Tear them down. Let the rubble of your past become the raw material of your future. And as you strip away the falsehoods, you will see something strange in the mirror. Not a new you, a remembered you. The one who existed before they told you what to be. The child who dreamed without limits. The rebel who asked dangerous questions. The lover who felt too deeply. The thinker who didn't need approval to trust his own mind. That is your core, your essence. Not perfect, but pure. And this is what they fear. Not your success, not your productivity, but your presence. Your untamed, unwavering, undivided presence, because a person who has remembered who they are cannot be controlled. They don't need to yell. Their silence is loud enough to disturb illusions. Their stillness is enough to expose the frenzy of the world. So they call you too intense, too deep, too much. But you are not too much. They are too shallow to hold what you carry. Let them drown in the surface. You were built for the deep. Because this journey is not about becoming superhuman. It's about becoming fully human. To feel without drowning. To think without breaking. To stand alone without crumbling. And this takes discipline, not the cold rigidity of the ego, but the sacred discipline of the soul. The kind of discipline that says, I will not betray myself to be loved. I will not dilute my essence to make others comfortable. I will not confuse survival with life. And when you hold that line not once, but every day, something shifts in your nervous system. The mind begins to trust you. The body begins to soften. The soul begins to speak. Not in thunder, but in whispers, in dreams, in visions, in those moments of eerie knowing that no logic can explain. This is the return of intuition, not the fluffy kind sold in books, but the raw, ancestral intelligence buried beneath centuries of noise, the compass of the soul, the GPS of the unconscious. It doesn't speak in plans. It speaks in pulls, in nudges, in the sacred ache that says, go here, not there. And when you follow it, even when it makes no sense, life begins to open. Not easily, but honestly. Because the universe doesn't reward obedience. It rewards alignment. And you cannot align with your soul until you disobey the mind that was programmed to keep it silent. So let the old you die, not with hatred, but with reverence. He tried. She survived. They did what they had to do with what they knew. But now, you know more. Now you see the matrix for what it is, a dream sold as reality. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You cannot go back to sleep, no matter how tempting it is. You cannot return to the illusion, no matter how seductive its comfort, because you tasted truth. And once the soul remembers its flavor, nothing else will satisfy. So walk on, through the ashes, through the confusion, through the silence that roars louder than any applause you've ever received. And as you walk, the mind rewires, not through force, but through surrender, to something older than thought, truer than belief, greater than fear. The soul, your soul. And she is not here to please the world. She is here to set it on fire. Al isse di pregno, ChatGPT da noi. Awakening is not a moment. It is not a flash of light descending from the sky, nor a one-time revelation that ends all doubt. It is a slow, relentless peeling away of the false until only the real remains. It is a war waged in silence, not against others, but against your own resistance to becoming. And the deeper you awaken, the more violently the mind resists, because awakening demands the death of everything you clung to for safety, your excuses, your labels, your carefully curated identities, the roles you performed to be loved, the masks you wore to be accepted, all of it burned. This is not a loss. This is a rebirth. But make no mistake, birth is never painless. There will be nights when it feels like you're disintegrating, days when you question your own sanity, moments when the old world calls you back with open arms, whispering sweet lies dressed in nostalgia. You were happier before, remember? But you were never happy. You were distracted. There's a difference. Distraction wears the costume of joy, always moving, always talking, always performing. But joy, real joy, is silent, grounded, present. It doesn't need witnesses. It doesn't need applause. And when you begin to awaken, truly awaken, you will learn the sacred difference between feeling good and being free. Feeling good is temporary. It comes and goes with circumstance, with weather, with opinion. But freedom, real, internal freedom, it stays. Even in pain, even in solitude, even when the world misunderstands you, labels you, exiles you. Because freedom is not the absence of suffering. It is the refusal to be owned by it. It is the ability to feel everything without being consumed. To observe the storm without becoming the storm. To move through fear without kneeling to it. That is true awakening, not becoming untouchable, but becoming unshakable. You still feel, but you are no longer enslaved by what you feel. You still think, but you are no longer defined by what you think. You still break, but you no longer shatter, because in this rewiring, the soul returns to its rightful throne, no longer a prisoner of the mind's compulsions, but the master of them. You stop asking the mind for truth, and you start using it as a tool, sharp, precise, but no longer your ruler. This is the reversal of roles. The soul leads, the mind serves. That's how it was always meant to be. But modern life inverted this order. It crowned the mind as king, the ego as priest, and exiled the soul like a heretic. It taught you to chase logic even when it kills intuition, to obey reason even when it drowns your aliveness. And now, your task is not to destroy the mind, but to humble it, to return it to its sacred function, to think, to plan, to solve, not to define who you are. Because who you are is not a thought. It is not a story. It is not a belief. It is a presence, an awareness, a silent watcher that sees all without being any of it. And the deeper you drop into that awareness, the less reactive you become. Not because you don't care, but because you no longer need to defend a false self. You no longer need to fight to be seen, heard, validated, because you are, with or without anyone's permission. This is what they fear the most. A human who no longer needs the world to know who they are. A human who carries their identity like a sword, not a cage. This kind of peace is dangerous. It cannot be sold, it cannot be stolen, it cannot be marketed, because it does not depend on anything outside of you. It is the peace of a mind that has been purified, of a heart that has been raptured and rebuilt, of a soul that has remembered its own divinity. And from this place, everything changes. You no longer react, you respond. You no longer chase. You attract. You no longer argue. You observe, because you know now. Nothing anyone does is about you. Nothing anyone says defines you. All judgment is projection. All hate is self-hate looking for a mirror. You no longer take things personally, not because you've grown cold, but because you've grown conscious. You've stepped out of the game. You've unplugged from the matrix. You've walked out of the theater where everyone's still pretending. And when you walk out, the silence is deafening. At first, it feels like loneliness, but soon it transforms into sovereignty, into presence so vast, so alive, It needs no company to feel full. This is the gift of awakening, not bliss, not perfection, but presence. And presence rewires everything. Because when you are present, truly present, you see clearly. You no longer hallucinate motives. You no longer project stories onto people. You no longer live in the past or future. You are here, whole, enough. And in this presence, you begin to choose differently. Not from fear, not from urgency, but from truth. You walk away from noise, not to be dramatic, but because you no longer feed on chaos. You say no, not to rebel, but because you know your yes is sacred. You go silent, not because you have nothing to say, but because you've learned the value of stillness. And this stillness, it is not emptiness. It is clarity. It is power. It is the sound of your soul, finally unmuted. And it changes everything. You stop needing to convince anyone. You no longer feel the urge to explain your path to people who've never left their own front door. You stop trying to decode yourself in a language that was never meant to understand you. Because you see it now, not everyone will get it. Not everyone can. They're still speaking in chains, still negotiating their worth with a world that's forgotten how to love without conditions. But you've tasted liberation. And once you've had a mouthful of truth, you can never stomach lies again. Even the ones you told yourself. Especially those. That's the real fire of awakening, not the fight against the world, but the battle with your own illusions. The lies you whispered just to survive. The masks you wore so long, you forgot there was ever a face underneath. And when you strip it all back, when there's nothing left to hide behind, you don't find emptiness. You find the real you, naked, unpolished, radiant. You find a mind finally free from manipulation. A heart no longer caged by old stories. A nervous system no longer triggered by shadows. This is the rewired mind, not a new machine, but an ancient soul finally allowed to breathe. And the more you breathe, the more you see. You start noticing what was invisible to you before. How most people speak from wounds, not wisdom. How entire lives are built on avoiding the truth they're too afraid to face. How society trains us to dress our trauma in ambition, our emptiness in achievement, our fear in perfection. You start seeing the world like an X-ray, all masks and mirrors. But instead of judging it, you understand it. You feel compassion, not pity compassion, the kind that doesn't rescue or enable, but simply sees, without agenda, without expectation. Because when you've met your own darkness, you stop fearing it in others. And that's what makes you powerful. Not that you're untouched by pain, but that pain no longer defines your direction. You become the calm in the chaos, the eye of the storm, the grounded presence that others don't understand, but instinctively trust, because you've done what few ever do. You've sat with yourself long enough to know who you are without distraction. You faced the parts of you that terrified you. You walked through your own personal hell, not to escape it, but to understand it. And now, you're no longer running. You're no longer seeking. You're simply here, fully, freely, fiercely. And it's from this place that you begin to create, not to prove, not to perform, but to express, to give form to what's always lived within you, hidden beneath the noise, your truth, your vision, your essence. And the world will feel it. Even if they don't understand it, they'll feel it. Because truth has a frequency that cuts through illusion. And your presence becomes the transmitter. You no longer need to raise your voice. Your energy speaks for you. You no longer need to fight for space. Your being creates space. You no longer need to prove your worth. You walk like someone who's already whole. This is what it means to rewire your mind without losing your soul. Not to upgrade your programming, but to dismantle it. Not to become better, but to become truer. Not to escape yourself, but to return to yourself. And once you've returned, you see it clearly. The goal was never perfection. It was never control. It was never dominance. The goal was presence. To live in such radical alignment with your soul that nothing outside of you can shake your foundation. Not rejection, not failure, not praise, not misunderstanding, because you no longer source your identity from outcomes. You no longer anchor your value in what others see. You've gone deeper. You've rooted yourself in something immovable. And now you are no longer a reaction to the world. You are a response from eternity. This is the mind reborn. This is the soul unleashed. And now you stand on the edge. Not the edge of danger, but of destiny. You've come through the fire, the unraveling, the sacred chaos of becoming. You've watched your old self dissolve in silence. You've mourned the illusions you once called home. And in their ashes, something ancient has awakened, not new, but real. Not louder, but truer. This is what they never taught you. That true rewiring is not about erasing who you are, but excavating it. That the mind was never the enemy, only the lies you fed it, only the fears you nurtured like pets, only the chains you called comfort. But now, the chains are broken, and in this final breath of truth, everything that once controlled you becomes irrelevant. The opinions, the rejection, the comparisons, the fear. You are not your thoughts. You are the one who sees them. You are not your history. You are the space in which it unfolded. You are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to become now. And you can choose. That is the ultimate revelation. That you are not bound by anything but your own consent. That you are not here to conform. You are here to create, to speak what others fear to say, to walk where others fear to go, to be what others fear to become. You are not a mistake. You are a message. You are not lost. You are becoming. And if the world does not yet understand you good, that means you're not repeating it. That means you're not trapped in imitation. That means you're finally living from the inside out. So now the choice is yours. Not a choice of words, but of alignment. To return to the noise, the numbness, the performance, or to stay here, awake, unapologetically alive. Not perfect, not fearless, but free. And in that freedom, in that radical sovereignty, you become unstoppable. Not because you dominate, but because you don't need to. You don't need to win arguments. Your presence is the answer. You don't need to seek approval. Your essence is already enough. You don't need to chase peace. You are peace. This is how you rewire your mind without losing your soul. By remembering that the soul is not here to serve the mind. The mind is here to serve the soul. And once you live from that truth, the world cannot touch you. Let them misunderstand you. Let them call you strange. Let them fear your depth. You were not born to fit in. You were born to wake the sleeping gods within you. So walk like one who remembers. Speak like one who knows. Choose like one who has nothing to lose, because they've already found everything. Yourself,